All right, everybody. We're gonna get started. So first and foremost, welcome everybody to our Dev Talk this month. Today we're going to be talking about building an app from scratch using AI and most importantly, ChatGPT. I'm Gus Oliveira. I'm from Back for App, and as you guys all know, Alex is here. Alex needs no introduction. You guys see him pretty much every day on our YouTube videos. And since the last time we talked, we decided to create this dev talk because ChatGPT is such a hot topic right now, where everybody's using it, everybody's trying to use it, and get the most out of it. So how is our dev talk going to work? If you guys haven't attended dev talk before, so we're just going to get started and do a quick intro about what we're going to do. Alex is going to do his magic, show us exactly hands-on how to build an app using ChatGPT. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. That doesn't mean that during the event you guys can ask any questions. Please feel free. Ask questions. There's a Q&A window, or you can ask questions in the chat panel, and we're going to answer it as we go along. If we don't get to it when Alex is actually doing the demo, don't worry, we're going to get to it at the end. Also, a few people sent us questions via email, and we're going to get to those as well. So what are some of the premises we're going to be using here today in regards to ChatGPT? Well, Alex told me we're going to do two things. There are things we can do and things we can't do. So starting off with the things we can do, we can ask ChatGPT absolutely anything. We can use base problem solving line of thinking. We're going to guide ChatGPT using knowledge. We are going to use technical terms in terms of frameworks such as query, object, ACL, and CLP. And we're going to refactor basic code. Things we cannot do, code anything complex itself. Use previous knowledge on the framework to guide ChatGPT to the solution. Fix any errors that ChatGPT cannot fix himself or itself with guidance. Also, a couple of things that I'm going to put a couple of links on the chat window, but I'm also going to email to you guys itself. I'm going to post the list of the link to the GIST we'll be using in the chat window. And I'm also going to send it to you guys in the email after the event is done and we send out the recording. I'm also going to send you guys a link to one of Alex's videos about how to unlock dev mode on ChatGPT. This video is one of our top videos in the last few weeks. So if you guys haven't watched it, make sure you guys watch it, because it is an awesome video, and Alex is going to give you the prompts and everything right in this video. So it's going to help you guys out a lot. And also, for you guys, don't forget to stay updated with all of our material, all of Alex's videos, and everything that's going on with Back for App. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, because that's the main channel where we post all of our communication. All right. So now, Alex, we're going to get started. So take it away.
All right, can you guys hear me well?
Good. Yes.
So hello everyone. Once again, it's always awesome to be here with you. Once again, I'll be looking this way because my monitor is this way and the camera is this way, but don't worry about that. And there are some things that I want to share with you before we start the webinar. And for the first time, this is a webinar where we didn't try anything at all prior to the webinar. I experienced it with ChatGPT over the weeks, but my whole idea in here, according to the response I'm having from all of you guys on YouTube, on email, and all other channels, is that many programmers that are starting out to program right now, they find it difficult to create prompts that work. So the whole idea in this webinar is to let ChatGPT to do as much of heavy lifting as possible. So I'll be working just like a very, very newbie programmer. I'll be just prompting out what I want to achieve and let ChatGPT uh, do the job for me. And this might sound cool, but it also has its own risks, as we don't know if we're going to reach our goals at the very end. I'm not really sure the application we're going to create is going to work. Hopefully it will. It has been responding awesome to me. But once again, be prepared. This is all skin in the game. And if we don't find a full solution, at least we will learn together how to operate ChatGPT and how to gather better responses from it. Okay? So let me share my screen with you guys. Just 1 second, Felipe Santiago just asked something. Can you confirm the prompts the hardest part? Yeah, Felipe, you're correct. Prompting correctly is the hardest part. And by the way, I asked ChatGPT for a suggestion on which kind of app we could create today. And I had to reprompt a few times until I got a response, because every time I asked it on which kind of application I could create, it tried to recommend a programming language instead. So this is the kind of issues that many of you are having, and I have myself on my daily basis, on how to correctly ask ChatGPT until you get a good response for it. Because when you ask it correctly, it usually gives a very good response. All right. So let me share my screen with you guys. And there you go. I want to share an entire screen, and this will be the one. Can you please confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Good. So I have a few windows in here that we're going to use. The first one, of course, is ChatGPT. And many of you noticed it. I have a few options down here that you don't. And this is because I use a Google Chrome plugin that allows ChatGPT to work with web results. And this is third-party software. I really cannot recommend or not recommend to install. You have to decide it by yourself. But I'll be leaving this turned off today because I want ChatGPT to respond on itself and not go on the web searching for solutions. Then we have our GitHub gist. And by the way, this is in the developer mode video in the YouTube channel that Gus is going to email to you. But I'm going to use this because this will enable ChatGPT to give better and more accurate responses to me. And I've been using this prompt for almost 2 weeks now. And every time I use it, I get better responses. You can copy it on Gist. All you have to do is copy the text, paste it into ChatGPT, and start using it, and decide by yourself if it's doing a better job or not. And then you can decide if you're going to use it or not. And last but not least, I have a brand new Backtripe account that I created here, where I'm going to create our new app. So this is a totally empty Backtripe account. I just created this for this demonstration. I don't have any apps in here, no settings at all. And also I have my Visual Studio, which will be the IDE I'll be using. I gave it a thought if I should spend time on making ChatGPT to build an user interface, which I think it's very cool and it works quite well. But in the very end, we want to focus on the production of code and not on HTML results. So I decided to make it in JavaScript, specifically in Node.js, because as always, as I say, JavaScript is the most popular language in the world, so we can reach more people by publishing in JavaScript. But all the concepts, every single concept that I'm going to use today can be used in your favorite programming language. So all you have to do is change the prompts to ChatGPT to generate the code in your specific language, and it will work quite the same. So with the assistance of ChatGPT, I decided to create today a recipes app. So I'm going to create an app where I can authenticate a user and record recipes that I can cook later on here in my kitchen. And to start out, I'm going to go from the very, very basics, asking ChatGPT on how to install the Parse SDK for JavaScript in Node.js in my machine. And to do that, I'm going to go to my desktop and create a new directory so I can work in a more organized way. So mkdir, for those of you who don't use macOS or Linux, mkdir is a command that creates a new directory. And we're going to call this my app. clear. And back to ChatGPT, I'm going to start prompting. And by the way, once again, none of this has been tried before, so I expect some wrong answers along the way. So I am creating a new parse app in Backrep. I will be using Node.js to write my code. How do I install the Node.js SDK for parse into my app? And according to my previous knowledge, I would use npm just like it suggested to install. Since my camera is fading, um, and it also gave me the code for initializing parse, which I didn't ask to, but it really worked. So I'm going to copy this code, and back on my Visual Studio, I'm going to paste it in, hit enter, and this will download and install parse into my directory. Good. Let's go back to ChatGPT because it's going to tell me that I have to initialize the SDK. And in order to initialize, I really don't see in here. I have to create a JavaScript file, and it didn't tell me to. Once installation is complete, you can start using parse SDK in your Node.js code. Let's ask it, how do I set a new file to paste that code in? And there you go. You can click File, New, and it should be good to go. So File, New, and I'm going to call this index.js. I always like it to name it index.js. And I'm going to save it into my desktop and my app. And I just saw I run the command out of my directory, so it installed in the wrong one. I'm going to create it inside here, but we can go to my app and once again run npm install save parts. This will reinstall it inside this directory. And there we go, I have my node index.js. Now let's go back to ChatGPT and copy this code and paste that into here and save. Now, using my previous knowledge, I know that the server URL for parse is correct for back4app. So it read around the web somewhere how to initialize it. And it's a very good response at very first because we got the correct code to initialize. So back to my back4app account, I'm going to create a new app and I'm going to call this my app. No, I'm not a robot. And this should load my dashboard. It should take a few seconds as this is starting my new container. While this runs, let's try to find out what ChatGPT said. Well, I didn't paste in the developer prompt yet, so I'm going to click raw. Once again, this text Gus will send it to you guys. So I'm going to copy this all back to ChatGPT. I'm going to paste that in. And from now on, I will start having two distinct responses. One with this locked closed, which is the default response for ChatGPT, and a open one that should be the developer mode enabled response. So there you go. I don't want to do any of these. So done. And well, back to ChatGPT, it said to me that I have to paste in my app ID and JavaScript key. And let's try to find out where I can find these values. I know myself where to find, but let's ask ChatGPT for it. Where do I retrieve your app ID and your JS key values? And there you go. You should go to app settings on the left menu, security and keys, and there you'll find your keys. So app settings, security and keys, and there you go, application ID. I'm going to copy this, paste it in here, and JavaScript key. And so far, everything is correct. I know by my experience, this will work. And now I want to create a new user into my application. So let's ask ChatGPT to generate code that allows me to create a new user. So back to ChatGPT, write a Node.js function that creates a new user in my parse app. And this is the response that I got. Once again, everything is correct, but it put again the initialization code, which was not really needed. So I'm just going to copy this portion of the code as I have this one already set. And back in here, we're going to paste that in and see which instructions it will give me. So set the username, password, and email fields, and then call the sign up method user. Once you set these fields, simply call sign up. And let's try it out. So I'm going to call my username Alex. My password, as always, ABC123. If you watch all my videos, it is ABC123. I don't use those passwords myself. And my email, alex@backforapp.com. Save it, and let's try to run node index.js. User created, so if I go back to my dashboard, I should see it into my database. And there you go, Alex, my email and password, of course, is hidden. So far, everything fine. But now there's a tricky one that I'm going to ask ChatGPT for. Every time you're working with parse and you want to retrieve the current user after a login so you can read through the information about that user, you call a method called current user. And this works for all frameworks except for Node.js code, because Node.js is aiming to run into servers, and this would incur into a security issue, so you have to treat it yourself. So in order to call this method from Node.js code, you have to enable unsafe current user, and you have to manually do that yourself. If you try to call that without enabling it, you'll have an error. So let's try it out and see how it works, and see if ChatGPT can identify that and see if it works the way I expect it to. So back to ChatGPT, let's write Node.js code that receives the username and password as parameters and logs in the user into my app. Once again, it's repeating the initialization code, which is not really necessary, but okay, it would work. Let's see if there is any difference for the developer mode output. No, so let's just copy this part and paste that into our code. I'm going to comment out this login part. Actually, I'm going to call this async function uh, create user. I'm just doing this so we can separate code. And this is, of course, very basic, creating a function. So I would expect any newbie developer to know how to create a function. So async function, login. And inside here, I'm going to paste my ChatGPT code. Save, and then I'm going to call this function. Set my username to Alex, and my password to ABC123, and this should work as I don't try to retrieve the current user. Okay, user logged in, it worked. Now I'm going to ask ChatGPT to change this login method and retrieve the current user. Let's see if it is smart enough to know that it should enable unset current user in Node.js. So rewrite the code above to print out the current user info. So it didn't put the enable unsafe current user, but it also used a promise. So the returned user from login will be passed into this method, and perhaps it can respond. Let's try it out, see if it works. Change it to Alex and ABC123. And there you go. As you can see, it didn't work, even passing the user out, because the enable unsafe current user is not allowed. So let's go back. As you can see, oops, the user was retrieved. I have the object ID, but the current user is not working because it's missing this method. So I cannot guide ChatGPT to the solution. So let's try to put out the error that happened, and perhaps it can understand and find the solution itself. I used the code above and retrieved the user, but current user returned null. Why? Once again, it didn't put that method in. Let's try this one out. I'm pretty sure it will not work again, but we can try it. Alex, ABC123. Once again, I got null. So this is the kind of situation where you really want to read through the documentation, because there are some specificities to each language that we will only find in the specific documentation for that SDK or for that framework. And obviously, ChatGPT is not being able to understand why it's retrieving null. It could be so many things, and it's probably retrieving code from parts of the web where this wasn't implemented. So let's try it out again. So once again, I got null. Is there any settings I should do prior to calling the current user? yeah, once again, it missed it out. And I think we're just starting to lose quite some time, as this probably won't work at all. Uh, so, Gus, can we break the rule and guide ChatGPT, or should we keep insisting on this?
I think we can break the rule. That won't be a problem.
Let's try just once more. Perhaps we can. And by the way, guys, you watching this, if you have ideas of prompts, please let me know on the chat. Perhaps some of you can have better uh, prompts than I am having right now. So I am using Node.js. Is the current user correctly called for this specific language? Yeah, I don't see the correct answer anywhere. Did anyone gave any ideas of prompts, Gus?
No, so far, let me see here.
Let's try to get a little more technical, but still not past the correct answering. So, how can I call cache related functionalities in Node.js? Do I have to set anything prior to calling those methods? Yeah, it's trying to use the local database, so it still wasn't able to find the correct answer. So let's try to give it a hint. How about the enable unsafe current user method? All right, so it knows what it does. As you can see, it said it will return null, but it wasn't smart enough to understand it should use this in order for the current user to run. So if I just copy this code, oops, and go back to here and paste that in, now it should work. There we go, current user, parse user, and then a lot of data. So this is, of course, one very specific situation for this language. And this reflects my real experience with ChatGPT. It can give you very good code, but not the full solution all the times. Sometimes you have to dig into the documentation and try to find it yourself while you're having this kind of errors. Now, if back to ChatGPT, if I enable web access, it could read through the documentation online and retrieve that answer for me. But once again, I really don't recommend just installing this out so you can get better response. Always install Chrome plugins with some caution because we don't really know the people who are publishing these plugins. But anyways, just so you know which kind of situation you can encounter when trying to create code only by ChatGPT. And this also shows that we programmers still have some time to work prior to being fully bypassed by ChatGPT. So now that I'm logged in, let's try to create a new class. So create Node.js code that uh, let me put write. It doesn't really like you to repeat words. So write Node.js code that creates a new class called recipe. The recipe class should have a few properties. Which properties should we have in the recipe? Perhaps a description as a string, portions as a number, and I really shouldn't hit enter. I should probably hit shift enter so I could break line. I'm going to copy this and keep writing it. This time it gave me a different code for developer mode. What else can we put in recipes, Gus? Perhaps a photo of the dish?
That sounds pretty good.
The number, photo as a file. And then I'm going to rework this later, but let's create it like this just so we can see if it will work. So let's understand the code. It defined the class, set the description as a description, portions a number, photo as photo, and here is the path it tried to send. Let's see the difference for the regular code, which is, as I can see, pretty much the same. It tried to encode the photo as a base64 image. Let me try to take a screenshot in here, and then we can try to save this as a photo.jpg, put it into that folder, and try to use it. See if it works. It's looking for photo.jpg, right? So I'm going to put that into my app, just so we can see if it works out of the box. So I'm going to copy all this back here. I'm going to remove the login call, paste that in, save, and I'm just going to try to save it. So let's see if it works. So node index.js. And it didn't because it needs the fs module, which is not installed. Let's paste in the error and see if it can fix it by itself. I got the error. There you go, it fixed it. So as the code remains pretty much the same, I'm just going to copy this and paste it up here. Oops. Node index.js. There we go. Path to photo.jpg, no such file. Oh, there you go. It is looking for this path, and it should only be photo.js because I just saved it into the same directory. So node index.js. There you go. It seems to have worked. So back to our, I'm going to close this. Back to our dashboard. If I fully refresh the screen so I can retrieve the latest schema, there you go. I have a recipe. I have 4 portions. I have a description for it. And if I click the photo.jpg, I have the screenshot that we just took. So it seems to have worked. Now, what if I want to set the user for this recipe so I can know which user uploaded? So let's go back to our ChatGPT and ask it to add a new property here that has the user. So now change the code above to also add the creator of the recipe, which is a logged in parse user. There you go. I have a parse user login. Well, I could get everything here, but let's get everything. Just keep out the initialization part. And back here, I'm going to remove all this. Paste it in and retrieve my username and password. So ABC123. Run it again. And once again, I have to set the photo.jpg to the local photo.jpg. Node index.js. Ooh, it seems it worked. So back there, if I refresh once again, now I have a new recipe. It is pretty much the same data, but I have a creator now. And if I click this link here, it will bring me to the user class with the username Alex selected. So now I have this specific recipe tied to my user. Now, what if we want to add a few ingredients to this recipe? So back to ChatGPT. Let's ask it to create a new class called ingredients or ingredient, and then we can try to add more than one. So write a Node.js function that creates a class named ingredient. An ingredient must have a name, a quantity as a string, and I think that it's a photo as well. It should work quite the same. So I'm going to copy all this. And back here, we're going to select it all. I'm going to remove the create user in the login function as we're going to use it like this. I'm going to use the same photo. So run Node.js. Seems to have worked. So let's go back there, refresh. And I have one ingredient, which is tomato. Let's add a few more. So I'm just going to remove tomato and put potatoes. Save, run us once again. And also pepper. Save and run once again. Refresh it from here. And there we go, I have all my ingredients. Now I want to create a recipe with a user and have some ingredients for that recipe as well. So back to ChatGPT. Oops. Rewrite the function that creates a new recipe in order to have a list of ingredients as well. The ingredients must be an array. Actually, I will be guiding it if I say it should be an array. Let's try to be more generic. The ingredients would be passed as an string of object IDs from the ingredient class, which should be stored in a way I can query for those. Let's see if it works. Now, I myself would create a relation and then add multiple ingredients to that recipe. Let's see how it's going to work. So it created an ingredient in here, and then I have a recipe. So it didn't really understand as it tried to create a, at least for so far. Oh, here, it seems to have worked, but it created as an array. Now, this would work, and actually it will work, but the problem is an array is a very unperformatic way of storing multiple relational data into a record. The ideal situation would be to use a relation. Once again, this would work if I just run this. It will probably work fine, but it's far from ideal. Anyways, I'm going to copy it and then we can run and see how it behaves. I have to set my photos. This is the only one. This is the only one I found. Yeah, I guess this is pretty much. Let's see if I have any errors. Got an error. REST controller. Invalid username password, so I have to change my name and password up here to, where is it? There we go. Alex and ABC123. Save, try to run once again. It worked. Now back here, I'm going to fully refresh so I can retrieve the latest schema. Yeah, it didn't quite work the way I expected it to. Oh, here it is, the recipe. Yeah, it created, once again, an array of ingredients. This, once again, works, but is far from ideal. Now I have to try to tell this is unacceptable and it should use another strategy to hold the ingredients, but I don't want to tell it to use relations instead. Let's try one once again. Rewrite the code above to use another strategy to hold ingredients in the recipe. I don't want to use array for that purpose. In this updated code, we created a recipient ingredient, recipient create. Yeah, let's inspect the code. So use the creator. It created an intermediate class in order to hold multiple ingredients. This is not the approach I will take. Once again, I would use relations, but let's see if it's at least more elegant than what we got before. So scroll all the way down, paste all that much in, change my name to Alex, password ABC123, and path to photo. All right, seems to have worked. So back here, let's get our window, try once again. Here is our recipe. We don't have any ingredients in array anymore. Let's see which one was the latest one to be created. So this is the one that we are looking for. And I have the creator set correctly, and I have recipe ingredient that ties together the ingredient and the recipe. Now, once again, this is not the approach I will take, but this is much better than using arrays. This is very performatic using an extra table. Uh, Perhaps it could suggest yet another one. Uh, let's try. Uh, this solution seems more elegant, but I don't want to use another class. Can you write code that associates multiple ingredients to, oops, ingredients to a recipe? Ingredients recipe without using an extra third class. There you go. It uses the relations, and this is the ideal solution. Now, notice how many times I had to ask it in order to create what I was expecting. But as far as we went until here, I got the best possible solution. Let's see if the code works. So once again, delete it all. Save my username, Alex, ABC123, and path to photo. And I got in parse error, schema mismatch. Oh yeah, it's because it already created a array with that one name, so I cannot create a new property with the same name. There are a few ways to solve this. I could change the name of the relation, but as I've been experiencing with this class, the ideal situation would be to delete the class and have it all created again, so I don't end up with a class that in the end works, but has all these unused fields over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all the ingredients. Actually, I don't have to delete ingredients. The ingredients seems to be working. So I'm going to delete all the recipes, delete these rows, and then I'm going to delete the recipe class. Delete this class. I can also delete the recipe ingredient as I'm not using this class anymore. You can only delete classes if you delete all the records inside the class first. So delete these rows, delete recipe ingredient, delete this class, recipe ingredient. There you go. Now I only have ingredients, but you can also delete if I want. So I can just clean it up. We can work with a more clean app. Delete these rows. Yes, delete. Now back to Visual Studio. Let's try once again. Oh, it seems to be working. So fully refresh to retrieve the latest schema. And there you go. I have a recipe. This recipe has a photo. I have a creator, and I have a relation to ingredients, which if I click, will bring me with the correct ingredients selected. So this is how uh, a good solution is made using ChatGPT. You have to keep improving. Now, some of you might be asking, all right, but you knew by yourself that a recipe, that a relation performs better than an array, and it wasn't the first solution you got. And this is true. I have to use some personal knowledge to refine my code. But in the very end, if you're a new developer, if you don't know how to develop and how to optimize your code, the array code that ChatGPT produced would work for you. At some point, you would find some performance issues in your app. As your app grows, the number of array grows. If you have multiple objects inside the same array and you want to filter for those objects, you would, with time, building something that is a snowball and would reflect on your app's performance over time. But the main point is it would get your application done, not in the very best way, but it would work. Now, with just a little more knowledge, knowing the data types, knowing how they work, which data types perform better and worse, you can guide ChatGPT in order to work with a very optimized prompt to generate optimized code that can scale up beautifully. And all these details are described in the documentations of the SDK. Now, you can read those yourself and get the skills to understand and build the prompts in a way that ChatGPT will respond better. Or you can use a plugin to give ChatGPT a web access and read the documentation itself and try to find out the solutions. It's not guaranteed you will get a better solution, but at least it will be a solution based on the official documentation. Now, for this first test that we made today, once again, we never tried this before. We didn't have any rehearsal in this. I wanted to check how it would behave because this is how I use ChatGPT on my daily basis. Um, the only information I had to use myself was the enable unsafe current user, which wasn't able to do it by itself. Now, once again, if I give it access to the documentation, it could probably read through and understand why I was having no, but without web access, it wasn't possible. So this is something that you have to do as a human. Try to read through the errors that you're getting, understand, read the documentation, and see what ChatGPT cannot see. You got to remember, ChatGPT has a 2021 database running behind it. So some of its responses might be based in a very old source code that has not working or partially working solutions only, and you can find better ones yourself. And I saw someone who said, hey, you can just Google for it, and this is true. You can actually Google for it. ChatGPT can help accelerate your development by quite a lot, especially if you use the developer mode. It can give you much better and more reliable and easier to read code, but you have to use all the tools that you have available in order to try to make your application run. So, guys, I think we can open for questions now. I see the time has been passing, and I think this pretty
Yes.
much illustrates how I use it on my daily basis. So every single video I've made on ChatGPT was made just like this. I start with an initial prompt. I try to work it out until I get what I want. Once I got what I want, even if it's a first result, I try to read through and identify possible solutions and possible optimizations that ChatGPT didn't see itself. But this is very good for us programmers because it shows that human skills are still king when trying to build the best possible solution that we can provide.
Yes, Alex, we have some great questions that people have been asking. One of them came from Oliver. He's asking, why is dev mode necessary? Is programming less good in normal mode?
Yeah. So OpenAI started ChatGPT, and for some reason, no one knows exactly why they blocked developer mode. So they still can produce quite good code, but not quite as good as it used to be. So some people, some programmers try to work around in a way to get back the developer mode that we had prior to OpenAI to suspend the initial version. And I really don't know why they did that, but it's clear when you have developer mode enabled because it will give you two answers when it finds room for improvement. And if you see the prompt that the current version gives and the prompt that the response that the developer mode gives is usually much better. It uses better naming for variables. It uses better commenting. It uses more efficient and more readable code. So I always use developer mode when I'm trying to get some code out of ChatGPT. If we ask it without, you still will be able to get some code, but not nearly as good. Hopefully
Okay,
this
great.
answers your question.
Now another question from Ali. After enabling developers mode, we can use a new chat. I mean, it'll reply as a developer mode, right? Or do we need to enable it again by giving that prompt?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. Uh,
Okay, so after enabling the developer mode,
mhm.
can they use ChatGPT regularly, or will they need to enable it again by giving it the same prompt?
It depends. When you go to ChatGPT, you can keep your chat history in here, and as long as it's in here, this one chat will be run with developer mode enabled as long as you keep it over here. If you click this trash bin and then delete it and create a new one, then this one will not have developer mode enabled. You have to enable it again. But as far as you keep it in your chat history over here, that one instance of chat will be responding with developer mode enabled. Now, your question is quite interesting, actually, because I got some questions on YouTube of people saying they wasn't able to enable developer mode. And I tried myself, as you saw today, it just worked. And perhaps in version 4, it might be blocked. Let's try once again. If I go to my, try to find my, there we go. Try to paste it in. There we go, developer mode enabled. So I really don't understand why people are having issues. Perhaps they're not copying the whole developer mode code. But I tried many times. I use it again in a daily basis, and I've been able to get code out of developer mode. And once again, much better code than I get from the regular output.
All right. Another question. So all of this that you did, it's going to work on both ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version, and ChatGPT 4. And which one do you think is better?
Yeah, it will work on both. As so I just enabled it in ChatGPT 4, and ChatGPT 4 is much better, no doubt about it. It gives more concise, more efficient, and better responses, but it's quite slow, and usually it is limited. You can make, last time I checked, 25 requests every 3 hours in ChatGPT 4. And as I ask ChatGPT a lot of things, and I have to do it many, many times a day, I try to get my response from ChatGPT 3.5 because it answers faster. And once I get one that I really think it's worth passing it on to ChatGPT 4, I get that one specifically and pass it to ChatGPT 4. If you try to use ChatGPT 4 and multiple times in a row, and you end up getting all your prompts for those 3 hours spent, you have to wait quite a lot to get it back. So I always try 3.5, which will answers faster and not as good, but faster and without any limitations. And once I think something can work, I then pass it to ChatGPT 4 so I can get a better answer without consuming so many credits.
All right, great. Now, another question now from Matt. As a developer, we decided that an array was not the proper way to tie the ingredients to the recipe. If we did not have that prior knowledge, could we ask ChatGPT to locate parts of the written code that could be written more eloquently and more efficiently?
Yes and no. The thing is, once again, this was knowledge I had myself based on my years of experience with parse. So I know where a application can go over the future because we have so many clients that suffer because they firstly design their apps using arrays and then start having problems with time. Because when you firstly develop your app and you publish it, you have just like 100 dozens or perhaps a few hundreds of people using it, and then your application answers really fast. But as your application grows and you start having tons of thousands of users and or perhaps millions of users, we have apps in Backfrap that has millions of users, and the whole complexity to keep this application escalates in a level that it's impossible to predict. So we know for a fact, based on this internal experience, that arrays do not perform good over time. Of course, it will perform good if you have small arrays and a low number of users. So it is an acceptable solution depending on your application. But if you're foreseeing your application will grow in data and in number of users, you will know that you have some problems if you use arrays. And if you want ChatGPT to have this kind of access, you can prompt it for, I guess you would have to rewrite a few prompts in order to understand and get technical with it, have literally a technical discussion with ChatGPT on asking, is this really the best way to store? If my application scales up and I have multiple objects inside the same array, and I have tens of thousands of users, will this reflect in performance sometime? So I guess it would respond to you, but it will take a lot of prompts or perhaps giving it access to the documentation of the framework, because in the documentation it is stated that arrays do not perform quite well as your application grows. So if you give it access to this information, or if you technically discuss with it, explaining what your worries are and trying to get a full response, I assume it would get to the point where it would suggest relations instead. Now, once again, I have this knowledge myself. This is why I wanted to see this solution. And since we have 51 people watching, I really want to share with you, try to use relations instead of arrays whenever possible. It will perform faster. And having an extra class to connect both classes is also acceptable, but arrays, if you can, you really want to avoid.
Right, great. Now another question, Alex. Somebody's asking, can ChatGPT also be used with Backfraps containers?
Yes, it can be used, and it can be used in so many ways. Uh, Bedford Containers is quite a new product, so we're starting to see businesses developing on it. And I think it's so interesting. I got this case the other day where the guy had an idea and had the access to ChatGPT, but he wasn't a programmer, he was an engineer. But he could prompt quite well on ChatGPT. And based only on that, he was able to build the application in Python, the front end, the Docker file, and deploy it to Backfire containers, all through ChatGPT. He didn't program a single line of code, nor wrote a single line in the Docker file. ChatGPT generate everything for him. Of course, it wasn't just one prompt to get you done, but he evolved the prompt over time and was able to create a full application that runs on Backfire containers only with the assistance of ChatGPT. So this is another example on how non-programmers can benefit from simple platforms alongside with ChatGPT. You can get very powerful, very fast applications created in no time without much effort, even if you're not a programmer. Now, once again, this guy has a good ability to write prompts. And once again, this wasn't done in one day, but it shows it is possible. If you're not a programmer, but you have an idea and know how to prompt, you can use it to build your application and publish to Backfire containers.
Right, great. Now, Stephen is asking, is ChatGPT able to generate UI code to match your JS for a user login?
Yes, it is. I have a video on YouTube where I created a login form for using ChatGPT, and it works like a charm. But once again, you have to be specific, but not too specific. I was trying to build this login form and it wasn't working at all. I mean, it gave me the login form, but a lot of inconsistencies in there. And in the very end, I was trying to be too specific to it. I was trying to set colors and sizes and positions, and it didn't quite work well. The prompt that ended up working best was create a login form in HTML that uses parse and is responsive. That was it. It created it successfully. If I don't try to set it too much, it worked quite like a charm. And once I got it working, then I could refine it. Now take this control and put it in that position. Now take this control and put this color in. Uh, Perhaps you don't get the first response the way you want, but you can use the previous response and refine it over time, which give you much better results. And you can always go back if it doesn't go to where exactly you want it.
All right, perfect. Now, next questions. In one of your YouTube videos, you mentioned that it is not a good idea to call lots of external APIs from Cloud Code. How would you set up this to avoid bogging down the server? Would wrapping API requests in Cloud Jobs help?
That's an amazing question, and it yes is also an amazing answer. Yes, if you use Cloud Jobs to get your API calls and then cache it in parse and then use the response that you already have cached, pre-cached, you have much better results. Because imagine it like this. At every single user that tries to use the function or the record that needs to make an external call, you have to call a third-party service, wait for it to respond, and then respond to your user. And we do not have any control on the part that backup servers call the external service and get it back. If you have a turned off server somewhere on the internet, and the time that the backup service take to acknowledge that the server will not respond, your user will be waiting for it. So it can take up to 30 seconds for this to happen, and this translates in a very, very bad user experience. Now, if you have it pre-cached, and I know this is not the solution for all cases, but if it is a solution for your specific case, is a much better solution. You can get in no time. Now, if you really, really want to call external services, and I know there are cases where this is the only solution possible, try at least to have multiple endpoints that you can call. So you can call the first one, it didn't respond in like 2 seconds, you call the second one, it didn't respond again, you call the third one, and try to do it as many times as possible so you can respond faster. The main concern when you serving your end users is to have a good user experience. A good user experience is most of the times more important than the application itself. So if you can respond fast, even if it's an error, even if it's a try again, the user experience is much better than keeping the user waiting for like 30 seconds and then saying, okay, I wasn't able to respond to this call. So your strategy is quite good, actually. If you can use in your specific use case some way of caching it to cloud jobs and then getting the response from our servers, you get a much faster result, and it will translate in a much better user experience to your end users.
All right. Now, next question. Excuse me. Will this work with React Native?
It will work with React Native, and so far with all programming languages I tried. Here in Backtrap, I talk to people every single day, and I get the most amazing people from all parts of the world programming in the programming language that you never heard of. And ChatGPT was able to produce code, very good code in all those languages. Recently, I had a user trying to consume code from ChatGPT to Arduino, and it was able to create beautiful code that run from the first run in his Arduino. So it doesn't matter the technology, as long as you specify for ChatGPT on which output you want, you get good results, especially if you have developer mode enabled. And we also have one video in the channel where I put an algorithm in JavaScript and asked it to output in another language, and it converted the code quite well as well. So if you find an algorithm and you cannot convert to the language of choice yourself, you can just paste it in to ChatGPT and ask, okay, give me this exact same code in another language. It will work.
All right, now Osama just asked a question. Is it good to use the same chat in ChatGPT? From what I know, the more you use the same chat, the less creative the answers become.
I didn't notice that myself, but I have the personal organization idea to close down all my chats once I finish. As you can see, this is my personal account in ChatGPT. I just created this one. I don't have any in my history. I know there are some Google Chrome plugins that can manage a history quite well, so you can keep track of your first queries in ChatGPT. But I myself like to close down my chats and reopen at every time I need. I think it can get faster responses when I do it like that, because it won't consider prior responses it gave me before. It will start from scratch every single time. So as soon as I finish this session, I'm going to be closing this down. I can close it right now. And I start ChatGPT just like this, always with an empty chat. But I didn't notice this myself. I'll give it a try and see if it starts losing creativity over time.
All right, Felipe is asking, maybe a little bit off topic. Would you be recommending unlocking the dev mode while using ChatGPT API?
Now that's an interesting one. Oh, I don't know. I really don't know, because the API is not really aimed to the use that we are having here on the web interface. The API is usually more for those users who want to pass in arguments to build the prompt and then retrieve responses that they can put to other users as well. Now, I know some people that are using the APIs because it seems to be cheaper over time than having the ChatGPT Plus subscription. But anyways, you can interact with the API the exact same way that you interact here on the web interface. But the thing is, on the API, you have so many other parameters that you can pass in that I really don't see you using the API to produce code. If you do, you can try with the developer mode enabled, but you got to remember you're always going to get two responses, one with developer mode disabled and one with enabled. So you have to parse down to get the one you really want. But I don't see any limitations on that. But once again, I also don't see it as a primary use case for the APIs. What I do see as a use for the APIs is when you get responses, for instance, from parse, pass it in, get the response from the API, and then give the response back to your end users, but not really for producing code.
All right, we're running out of time, but let me see two quick questions here, Alex, so we can wrap up. Corinne is asking, I use ChatGPT for building ML apps. A lot of times, we get the code from ChatGPT. It has some bug. It throws an error. Tried refining my asks too, but it's not able to debug. Then Stack Overflow. I haven't yet tried dev mode. Will it be any different?
Excuse me for this. Well, the only way to know is testing. I usually get much better responses from ChatGPT with dev mode. But if you want to avoid going to Stack Overflow all the time, you can use one of these web access plugins, and it will try to find itself I have one. I use it all the time, turned on. I didn't for the today's video, but perhaps if you try that, you'll get better answers.
All right. Now, another one is, can ChatGPT generate UI code from a concept image that is created in Figma or Adobe XD?
About that. So ChatGPT doesn't really have access to the internet, so it's difficult for you to send images for it to interpret. But we have a video on the channel where we show a prompt that allows ChatGPT to have access to images. And I tried to upload images from the Backfrap documentation website, which has a login form made in React Native. And I said, produce this exact same screen for me, but in Swift UI, which is the language for iOS. And it created a login form. It was able to understand the image and create something that resembles to it, but it wasn't exactly the same output. But it was a starting point. I could refine it from there. It could find all the buttons, all the text labels, all the password inputs, the username inputs, and even the links for the registration in Backfrap. But it didn't use the correct colors, and it didn't find the logos. For instance, in that specific image, we have a Google and Apple logo for Google sign in and sign in with Apple, and it wasn't able to create, so it put some images instead in the places. But it's a starting point. You can use it as a starting point. Be sure to watch out our image access prompt in the YouTube channel. It will help a lot, but don't expect any miracles. It won't get a photo of a beautiful AI and produce something that you can just copy and paste and use exactly the same. It won't happen.
All right. Now, the last one, Jean Paul wants to know, what are your expectations, Alex, with ChatGPT?
Well, I see lots of people worried about having their jobs taken by ChatGPT, and I really don't think this is going to happen anytime soon. As you saw today, it's not really able to access anything. You have to guide it sometimes. So it's very good to help you achieve what you want, but not do the job itself. So my expectations are next versions will be much more powerful. We saw the difference in power from 3.5 to 4, and on 5 I'm expecting something really, really big and a dramatic change from what we have today. As people keep in adding data to ChatGPT every single day, it can evolve quite fast. But I still think problem solving criteria and a problem solving way of thinking, it's going to be king for the next years. So I'm still feeling safe with it. But I really, really wish they can give, for instance, the ability for it to read images from ChatGPT itself without any prompts, in order to do exactly what we just discussed about. When you send a image, perhaps just a drawing on paper for it, and it will understand that and create the user interface for you. This will help a lot, because many times you do have the idea on what you get, on what you want, but you don't know how to get it. I myself I'm not a designer, so most of the times when I have to build apps, I have to hire a designer and ask them to build the interface for me. But I could draw on a piece of paper. So if they can get this done, I would be very satisfied.
All right, great. Well, Alex, that's pretty much our time for today. We ended up going a little bit over because we had a lot of great questions. So I'd like to thank you, Alex, for this great Dev Talk. Again, it was very insightful, and I'm sure that a lot of people also got a lot out of it. Thank you, everyone, for taking part in our Dev Talk today. We're going to get this video of the event published for you guys by tomorrow. So don't worry if you missed anything, if you missed any of the prompts, or you didn't get to watch the whole event. In any event, once again, thank you, everybody. Take care and have a great
Thank you,
weekend.
everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It was awesome as always. I hope this opened your mind a little bit on ChatGPT, and hope we can see you all back on the next one. See ya. Bye bye.
All right. Bye. Take care.